Coming up! Throughout the history of warfare, there are plenty of survival stories that boggle the mind. However, there is one particular tale of a B-17 gunner that surpasses all others. In this video, we will take a look at Alan McGee, a crew member on an American bomber who was thrown from his aircraft with no parachute at 20,000 feet. Yet, through the hand of fate, he would somehow survive, living to tell the tale of the luckiest survival story in all of World War II. Hey guys, TJ here, and before I tell you about this legendary story, I want to talk to you about a different type of legend, Raid Shadow Legends, because they were cool enough to sponsor this video. Raid Shadow Legends is an absolutely awesome mobile game and has multiple game modes and over 600 champions to choose from, including these guys, the Dark Elves faction. According to their history, these elves got tempted by some art and philosophy and became some pretty bad warriors. Now they are in a huge war with the High Elves and won't stop until they win. My favorite of these Dark Elves is actually this dude, Ruel the Huntmaster, because TJ has always been a big archery guy, just something that I love to do. Also, Raid has some great new updates coming out as well. First, you can now use the Guardian Ring for tons of ways to use your champions. Plus, this December they are coming out with one of the biggest and most anticipated features ever. It is supposed to be a game changer and you don't want to miss it. Now, if you want to get a huge head start in Raid, all you have to do is click the link in the description or scan my QR code here, and you'll get the epic hero Shinoru, who is amazing in Doom Tower, as well as 200k silver, 1 XP boost, 1 energy refill, and 1 ancient shard so you can summon an awesome character as soon as you get in the game. All this treasure will be waiting for you here, so hop on today, and thanks again to Raid Shadow Legends. Enjoy. After the German forces invaded France in 1941, the town of Saint-Nazaire was held firmly in Germany's grip. This small city held a crucial key to Germany's war strategy thanks to its plentiful docks and access to the sea. The harbor was a hub for all sorts of ship repairs and, more importantly, housed the heavily armored U-boat pens, which were responsible for launching the deadly German submarine attacks on Allied ships. The Germans knew it was a high-value target and appropriately installed a large number of anti-aircraft defenses around the city to protect it from being bombed. Because of this, Saint-Nazaire was given the nickname Flak City and was notorious for being a deadly target for Allied bombers to try and attack. By 1942, Germany's chokehold on England, thanks to their deadly U-boats, was slowly beginning to break apart. But there was a long way to go before they were stopped completely. This was absolutely vital if the Allies wanted to be able to win the war. Unless the United States was able to get all of the men and supplies to England by ship, invading France would be too difficult and dangerous. As the year drew to a close and 1943 began, the United States Air Force was brought in to bomb the Saint-Nazaire docks and dispel the U-boats once and for all. It was here, in the process of bombing these factories and shipyards, that fate would give us one of the most amazing survival stories of World War II. Alan McGee was born on January 13, 1919 in Plainfield, New Jersey to a large family, the youngest of 6 children. At the age of 22, after the attack on Pearl Harbor in December of 1941, McGee immediately enlisted into the United States Army Air Force, where he was assigned as a ball turret gunner to a B-17 bomber that was aptly nicknamed Snap, Crackle, Pop. This name was given after the captain of the bomber, Jacob Fredericks, since he had worked for the Kellogg Company and the Rice Krispies cereal brand. It was painted with the appropriate nose art fitting the name. After arriving in England, McGee gained the rank of Staff Sergeant and took part in several combat missions with the 360th Bomb Squadron and 303 Bomb Group. McGee's 7th mission in his B-17 Flying Fortress would take place on January 3rd of 1943, the day that the United States Air Force launched a daylight bombing raid on the staging yard for the U-boat torpedoes at the Saint-Nazaire docks. The stakes were high, and McGee and his crew knew the severity and importance that this mission would hold with the intense defenses that were known to be around the area. Nonetheless, the soldiers were determined to succeed, and the 360th Bomb Squadron departed for Saint-Nazaire, France. The mission to attack Flak City was as fierce and deadly as expected. The planes were peppered with rounds from anti-aircraft fire and enemy fighters, sending many aircraft into flames. McGee's own B-17 was one of the many that was hit. During the battle, German defenders managed to land a direct hit to Snap Crackle Pop, sending the aircraft into a spin as it lost altitude. The shrapnel wounded McGee and damaged his chest pack that held his parachute. Upon inspection, he found a large hole in the middle of his chute, rendering it completely useless. He frantically searched for another parachute so that he could bail out, but with no success. Before he could continue looking for some kind of solution, another attack drilled the plane and knocked McGee unconscious. In this second hit, the shock of impact ripped through the B-17. His body was immediately thrown from the aircraft by the force, sending him plummeting to the ground from almost 4 miles in the air. As he quickly fell towards the ground with the cold air blowing against his face, he awoke to quite possibly the worst realization imaginable. He quickly saw that he was no longer in his aircraft, but hopelessly falling towards the ground. He had no parachute nor any hope of surviving. As he saw the ground speeding towards him, McGee uttered a final prayer to God, pleading for his life. "I do not wish to die," he told God, "because I know nothing of life." As his final thoughts flooded his head, the oxygen shortage and shock finally overtook his body and rendered him unconscious yet again, for what he thought to be the final time. In what may be described only as a miracle, or perhaps sheer incredible luck, McGee happened to land right upon the train station of Saint Nazaire. Like many other stations of the time, it had a decorative glass roof on top to let in sunlight and warm the air. Since the train stations were open structures, this added natural lighting and allowed air to flow more freely for the passengers below. His body crashed through the roof at an extremely high speed. As the glass and decorative metal frame exploded from the impact, by some miracle, the force of McGee's fall was offset, saving him from certain death. His body was snagged and left dangling from the steel girders that arched over the station's railway tracks. When German soldiers found him, he was in horrible condition, draped over the girders lifelessly. His arm was nearly taken completely off in the fall, his eye and nose were almost crushed entirely, and there was severe damage to his teeth, leg, knee, and ankle. Additionally, his lungs and internal organs had received significant damage and were partially crushed, but somehow McGee was alive. As the German soldiers carefully plucked his limp body from the beams, a German military doctor was summoned to provide medical care for the staff sergeant. As McGee slowly regained consciousness, the doctor greeted him with respect. "We are enemies, but I am first a doctor, and I will do my best to save your arm." The doctor managed to prevent his arm from needing amputation and assessed the rest of his wounds, bandaging them as he went through his inspection. The doctor counted 28 individual shrapnel wounds and several more internal injuries. In time, Sergeant McGee was able to make a near full recovery and spent the rest of the war in a German prisoner of war camp. Only 2 other members of his crew survived the attack on their plane and were able to bail out to safety. The navigator, 2nd Lieutenant Glenn M. Harrington, who lost a leg in the process, and the tail gunner, Staff Sergeant James I. Gordon, who managed to survive without injury. Unfortunately, the other 7 crew members did not make it out alive. In May of 1945, McGee's POW camp was liberated and he was set free to go back to the United States. He received the Air Medal for his meritorious conduct as well as a Purple Heart. Although he retired from the Air Force upon his return, McGee earned his pilot's license and worked in the airline industry before eventually retiring in 1979. Years after the incident, Staff Sergeant McGee would summarize his experience by simply stating, "I don't know how I got there, but here I am, thanks to God." Unfortunately, McGee found himself unable to properly thank the German doctor that saved his life, as he never learned his name and it was not listed in any records. McGee's fall would go on to be remembered by the locals as the Miracle of Saint Nazaire. The event would be commemorated 50 years later on January 3rd of 1993. when the people of St. Nazaire erected a statue dedicated to McGee and the crew of his bomber with a 6-foot tall monument. I hope you enjoyed this historical recreation. Please make sure to click subscribe and comment if you have any ideas for future videos. If you want to support my content and get awesome bonus videos, please check out the Patreon link in the description of this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.